Hello Virgo, and welcome to your monthly horoscope for January. This is for the Sun or the Ascendant. Now, as ever, I'm going to give you a broad overview of what to expect. Please stay with me. I'll then dive deep to give you in forensic detail all the events and influences that you can look forward to. So as this month begins, please see on the screen your chart wheel. Now this is a collection of energies, a stellium in the sign of Capricorn, which for you is delightful because Capricorn energy is very much about self-expression and playfulness. But it's not just the Sun, which is always there at this time of year. It's also your ruler, Mercury, but also Venus, the planet of relating, and Pluto, the planet of passion. Now also you can see on the chart wheel that the Moon and Mars at the turn of the year and the midpoint between the Moon and the Sun in Capricorn is actually in Sagittarius. So that's the fourth house. So all this creativity that's going to be bubbling up in your situation this year, I feel it will be linked in some way or another to where you live. Your home is going to be very important. The environment that you live in, if your home life is already settled, will therefore inform where you feel comfortable. So outside of your abode, in your work or where you travel, you're going to want to feel a sense of ease. Because the Moon and Mars are very close together, if you're not feeling that sense of ease, it could make you feel restless. Now, speaking of restlessness, of course, Uranus has had a massive impact on us all over the last few years in Taurus. For you, this is house 9, very much about being pioneering and experimental. And that links to a glorious new moon for you on the 2nd. So great for learning new things, trying different things, being more spontaneous. So that gives you a bit of a flavour of what to expect. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I'd be honoured if you did so now. Please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. Also, if you'd like to get your year 2022 personal forecast based on your time, date and place of birth, you can order that. And if you're ordering in 21, you'll get the rest of that year free. If you order later in January, I'll give you 12 months from the time of your order, plus you get a character analysis and 30% off. Find out searing insights into how your personal journey will unfold over the next year. Please see the link beneath this video. So Virgo, your January forecast sees a collection of energy in your sister Earth sign of Capricorn. So this triplicity, the other sign of course is Taurus, is 120 degrees from your Sun. So very enabling, very self-expressive, can be playful, the 5th house. But Mercury, your ruler, I have to tell you, is in shadow before it begins its retrograde in the sign of Aquarius on the 14th. Now it moves there on the 2nd. So just be aware that if you're making any social plans, things can be a little bit fluid. And because Mercury almost moves so quickly, it can also be about appointments that get a bit snared and snagged, particularly from mid-month. And if you're applying for jobs, for example, that could be an area that can cause a few niggles too. But of course Saturn has been in the 6th house where Mercury arrives on the 2nd for just over a year, about a year and 13 days as we start this new journey of the new year. And Saturn has been pushing you to become ever more disciplined, something that you have a natural talent for. So if your work situation didn't feel satisfying, and Saturn's been pushing you to make a change, or I should say Uranus has been pushing you to make a change because they've been agitating each other, and Saturn may have seen you a bit more resistant to that change. Now those two are once again at the start of this year gnawing away at each other, so there's the potential for that. But all this energy in the sign of Capricorn is pushing you to believe in your talents and the way that you go about things, that your passion and your individuality can actually modify what you're doing in the more practical elements of your life. And Uranus supports that through its angle to the new moon on the 2nd, which is very enabling. So it means that if you're open to the new can come into your life and be very, very positive for you. But I feel how it seems in terms of your environment, how you feel about things will be important. And that's because of the Sagittarius energy of the moon and Mars together at the turn of the year, and the midpoint between the sun and the moon in Sagittarius. So things need to feel right, whatever you're doing, whether it's romantically, socially, creatively, hobby-wise, or your work. It has to feel right. You can be a practical person, but don't let your practicality pulverize your passion, because all this Capricorn energy is saying be passionate, but you also need to be protecting your sensitivities too. So as we go into this new month and we have the overall picture of all the planets, the other one I want to tell you about is Jupiter. Because Jupiter's moved back into your opposite sign of Pisces. It went there last year twice, and it's now back into the sign of Pisces, which is your opposite sign. This is very helpful for romance or all kinds of relationships. Now it is going to be moving later on the 10th of May into the sign of Aries, which can be very good for devotional relationships or business or longer term finances. So that's really exciting for you. Also, Venus in a retrograde at the start of this year could make you think more about your relationship situation, but that's linking magically to Neptune, also in the sign of Pisces. So if there is someone who's really exciting you from a romantic viewpoint, both the first 12 days of this month and crucially the last 2 weeks can be real opportunities to springboard forwards, because in the last 2 weeks it's Uranus's time to link positively to Venus. So don't believe just because it's in retrograde that relationships can only go wrong. I'm afraid this very simplistic form of astrology tends to find an outlet far too much. A Venus retrograde asks us to think deeply, to be more profound. The sign of Capricorn is very much about stability. So for some people, maybe have had a bit more free and easy arrangement, maybe they're going to think about formalizing it. It doesn't necessarily mean the relationship's going to end. So if you're single, loads of opportunities for growth and positivity this month, Virgo. Really exciting. But it is true that your ruler Mercury moving on the 2nd into Aquarius and being in shadow does mean that there can be some niggles about those obligations and responsibilities that you often take on with, barely a half a breath. You're really stoic and can be one of the biggest givers of the Zodiac. But I think what it's saying to you, along with the sun's arrival on the 20th in Aquarius, is that where you are working hard, where you're trying to provide services or support to others, or being very sacrificing, it needs to be enjoyable for you, and it needs to feel right. Again, that 4th house energy that's also running on from the solar eclipse, which occurred on the 4th of December. So it needs to feel right, even if it's creative, playful, or it's to do with your work. So these are the central tenets of your situation. Now, because the new moon obviously does embrace the energies of Uranus more positively than the square with Saturn, which could create a bit of stress. So if you're in a situation where you feel really penned in and you're just not enjoying it, that will create stress. If you're open to change something, that can create opportunity. So the sun's angle to Uranus in the new moon for the next 4 weeks into the first couple of days of February is a great opportunity to freshen things up. The link between Venus and Uranus in the last 2 weeks, a great opportunity to freshen things up. But as we get to the start of the 2nd week of the month, well, Pluto is joined by the Sun in your 5th house. This is really transformational stuff. The conjunction can be very creative in a way, because especially in the 5th house, because if you think about it, the sun is the divine being of all ourselves, but Pluto is the deep, dark, sort of sometimes political side of our nature that we're not always so conscious of. So it could lead to a bit of a standoff between you and yours around the politics of a relationship, particularly because the moon is in the sign of Cancer, which it belongs in, but for you that's the 11th house of the group, whereas the 5th house is you, the individual. So finding the pivot point between what you give and get around friendships or your love life can be more politicized by the role of Pluto joining, or the Sun joining with the Sun. Now, as they separate, which they will do after about a week, as they're separating, the Sun makes its way into Aquarius. So that's a reminder for you that things have to work practically. You know, you can play with things, you can, you know, think about things, you can experiment with things, but then you want to see the practical return. That is what makes you you. And on the 24th, as Mars bursts its way into Capricorn, where it loves to be, this can give you awesome sex appeal. Well, even greater sex appeal. I do apologise at my oversight. You're absolutely going to, you know, be so feeling pumped with charisma. Wonderful stuff. Venus goes direct on the 29th for sure. Mercury moves back into Capricorn, but hey, it's your 5th house, so it's made a sojourn into the rather brittle 6th house. It's a bit picky and critical, and it's made its way back into the 5th. So there's so much passion, so much joy to go for. What's not to like? It's just down to how it feels. Make sure that's your guiding light this month. But if you can overcome some of the frustrations that we all have, you know, COVID's created huge frustrations on our sense of liberty and freedom, which is entirely possible with Saturn square to Uranus. If you can overcome some of those frustrations and just, you know, give yourself a bit of flexibility around that. Don't get too caught up in the detail. You know, this is one of your great gifts, but it can be a weakness of yours. Try to stay with the big picture. That's what Uranus is pushing you to do, to embrace exciting new trends, people, interests, knowledge, and see where it takes you. Thank you so much for joining me. Wishing you all the best for this new year, and goodbye for now.